my list. So yeah.
Well, why don't we begin? It's 7 o'clock. I'm Julie Lytle, and I'm very pleased to host the Deacons Talking. This is a partnership between the Episcopal Province of New England and the New England Deacons Network, where we're hoping to try to keep people connected between the biannual conferences and to be able to share stories of the ministries that each of the deacons are having so that we can gain wisdom from one another and celebrate the things that are going well and take the tricks of the trade with us, as well as sometimes to help each other troubleshoot and figure out ways to get around challenges that often are keeping us from completing things the way we'd like. So it's a great opportunity for us to hear each other's stories and to learn with one another. Tonight we have the good pleasure of having Bonnie Matthews with us. She's found a way to connect her professional life with her diaconal and spiritual life and has created a foot care ministry. So without a whole lot more to say, I'm going to invite Bonnie to tell us a little more about herself and her ministry and thank her for sharing it tonight.
Well, thank you. Folks, you might see a orange tail wander by while I'm talking this evening, and that is Franklin, my cat, who will probably want to be in the limelight a little bit. So sorry about that when that happens. I've been ordained since 2013, and I have worked at Hartford Hospital for 43 years. And besides my related family, Hartford Hospital is a family for me, having been there so long. And one of the things that occurred was about 2 years ago, the deacons in Connecticut read Unexpected Consequences by Suzanne Epting Watson. And one of the things that she said in her book, I would like to quote to you that she had written. To complicate things, it is abundantly clear to me that we need to be able as deacons to work with people outside of our congregations, to engage them in the process of becoming co-workers with us in the larger community. No longer can we as ministers of change in the world decide what that change should look like, decide what programs are needed to affect that change, and then lead the work ourselves, recruiting volunteers along the way. Rather, the process should be one of shared outcomes, shared ministry, shared transformation, and shared resources. This quote really hit me and made me think about my family at the hospital and the work that I do there as an employee, the friendships that I have, the contacts that I have, and my work as a deacon, and even how the hospital has supported me throughout the years in the ministry that I have, allowing me to change my hours of work so that I could go through deacon formation, allowing me to talk with people and be with people where they are when they need it. And one of those things that also occurs is on Ash Wednesdays, I join the pastoral care team, and I wear my collar underneath my scrubs because I work in the operating room, and I assist in distribution of ashes. And I do that for the employees, for the doctors, for the anesthesiologists, for the patients themselves, and for patients' families, since so many patients come in now under a day surgery situation. So I started thinking about these things and just really thought that one of the things that is most important to me is the fact that there are so many homeless people in the Hartford area that I've come to know a little bit more through Church by the Pond and the Ecclesia Ministries. And I prayed about this quote and realized that what I might be called to do is I might be called to see if I could get people together, to come together, to work together with foot care for these homeless people that we see down at Church by the Pond and the people who attend Church Street Eats at the Cathedral, which is a MANA program. And I was chatting with one of my oldest friends about this, and she really liked the idea. And she said, well, you let me know if you're going to do something around it. And I thought a little bit more, and I went back to the hospital. And the very first thing that I did was I approached the VP of nursing to see if the hospital would be behind something like this. And if they were, who would I get in touch with? And we had a global healthcare committee at the hospital that was reaching out and doing a lot of work overseas, and they hadn't done much in the community of Hartford itself. But I was advised to speak with them and meet with the vice president who is over the global healthcare committee. And I told them about my idea and wanted to know if this would be something that they would be interested in working with me on. And they were all excited about it. So the next thing was, well, if we were going to have something like this, where could we have it and when could we have it? And of course I wanted to have it during Holy Week for the first time that we were doing it. So this was in the fall of 2015 that we had started conversing. And I found out that on Monday, Thursday of Holy Week, the cathedral does not, Church Street Eats does not have a food program. So to do the foot clinic at the cathedral would not work for us on the Thursday. So we quickly adjusted to having this clinic on the Wednesday of Holy Week. My very good friend that I had originally talked to also was an employee who coordinated community activities with the University of Hartford. So I chatted with her a little bit, and she said, you know, send me a letter about everything that will be happening, and we'll see what we can do to help you. And I spoke with the cathedral and the parish that I was serving at, which is Trinity Hartford, and everyone seemed to be excited about it. Because it was a medical program that we were doing, the majority of the planning, other than the gathering, was done by the Global Healthcare Committee and myself, because we wanted to know what would we teach people to do, how would we teach them, how would we communicate with the attendees of the clinic about what it is they need, how we would educate them, and what kind of medical supplies would we need for this. All of that planning was done through the Global Health Committee. And we moved along, and we did well, and there was a lot of excitement around it until someone said, have you asked anybody if this is something that they might like? And I thought, okay, this was probably the first thing that we should have done. So myself and another person on the committee took the time out on a Thursday evening to go to the MANA healthcare program or food program rather, and we sat and talked with each one of the clients who had been there for their evening meal to see if this is something that they might be interested in attending, if they would want to have their feet cleaned and looked at and tested for nerve pain disorders and whether or not they had any sores, and to educate them on how they could better care for their feet, particularly if they were diabetics. And every single person that we talked to said yes. There was no hesitation. So we had high hopes for a very, very large turnout on our first foot care clinic. What we ended up having was supplies donated to us by different churches throughout the Hartford area, from Christ Church Cathedral and the Episcopal churches to First Congregational churches and the University of Hartford. They all donated socks and they donated nail files, and I had an in with a medical distributor warehouse, and I called them up to see if they could sell us supplies at the cost that the hospital would normally pay for them. And they said, we don't want to sell them to you, we want to give them to you. So we had a lot of our supplies donated from the medical distributor warehouse. The one thing that cost us quite a bit of money, which you're going to hear a little bit more about after I talk on the most recent clinic that we had, is what's called comfort cloths. We decided that we didn't want to use water and soap and pans and be lugging water back and forth and making messes with the water and having to clean that up. And we used what was called the comfort cloth, which was probably about an 8 by 12 cloth that was infused with soap and moist, and they're quite expensive. The podiatry clinic at the hospital actually donated those cloths to us for use on our first clinic. So our express was on its way, and we ended up having 18 volunteers for the very first clinic that we did. And they were volunteers from the hospital, volunteers from Christ Church Cathedral, Trinity Church Hartford, First Congregational Church in Glastonbury, and the University of Hartford in different nursing programs. So we were prepared. We were prepared with free supplies to clean the feet, nail files. We had equipment to check for nerve damage. We had brand new socks for everyone. We had a Spanish interpreter because when we were there, we noticed that there were quite a few people who had difficulty with English as a second language. And speaking about how to care for oneself, we felt that we had to make sure that we could communicate effectively for those who were Hispanic. We had April was our chaplain in attendance, who came along with her ministry dog, Sandy, who was very beneficial. And we had 700 pairs of socks. Wow. Needless to say, we didn't have 700 people that we cared for, but they all got several pairs of socks as we were finishing up with their feet. And we had all of these things that we were prepared for, but what we weren't prepared for were the sacred stories and the fact that we were just to be present and meet people where they were. They needed to tell a story. They needed to have someone hear the story and sometimes interject with an anecdote or just to say, that must have been very hard for you, for someone to understand what they were going through. Everybody who was participating, whether they were a client or whether they were a volunteer, received something from that holy day for us. We served 30 clients, we heard sacred stories, and we referred 5 people for additional care for their feet at Hartford Hospital. And one person, actually, we had to set up with a podiatrist in Wethersfield, which is probably about 8 miles from Hartford. And one of the volunteers there offered to drive this person because she was so affected by his story. So she brought him to the podiatrist, probably for 3 months going, until his feet were on their way to being healed. Everybody just loved what had happened and was so affected by what had happened. Affected by the fact that Sandy, April's ministry dog, just kind of walked around and went to the people who were seated and knew who to nudge and who to sit down with, and just who to be close to and to give that unconditional love to. It was quite amazing, and the feedback from the volunteers was phenomenal, particularly the feedback from the hospital workers, that they were not expecting to be as impacted as they had been by serving in this way. So they wanted to have a second clinic. And as we got into the year, summer came along, and I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a second clinic on December 21st, which is National Homeless Persons Day? And it would be close to Christmas, it would be wintertime, it would be when people need to have their feet checked again. So I threw that idea out, and everyone who was involved the first time said, that'll be great. That'll be great translated into a little bit of, that'll be great, but that's a busy week for me. So that was a hard part for the December 21st foot care clinic. There were people who had commitments. We couldn't get commitments from the University of Hartford, nor from St. Joseph's College in West Hartford, because it was semester break time. People had just finished finals, classes were over. It had an impact on the amount of volunteers that we had. But what we did do was we reached out to a few more churches in the Hartford area, and St. Monica's in Hartford joined us, and that's where April at the time was doing her internship. We still had lots of socks. We needed extra large socks. So we put out the call for those, and we put out the call for lotions. And at the same time that all of this was happening, there happened to be an article in the Hartford Courant, which is our Hartford newspaper, about a police officer in Hartford who was working very hard to improve community and police relationships. And he wanted to do something in particular for the homeless, and had gotten in touch with a group called Footwear for Care. And Footwear for Care champions retailers and other people who want to volunteer by giving donations for getting donations for shoes and boots. And they've been quite successful at it and have been doing something in the Hartford area. But when this article appeared, Don Hamer, who's the priest at Trinity Church where I had been serving, said, I think we need to try to get in with Jim to see if we can connect, and perhaps they can help us out with this clinic. So we made an appointment. We met with Jim Barrett, and we met with the head of Footwear for Care, and they were very excited about the concept of what we were doing. We were providing care. The clients were having a meal at the MANA program ahead of time. and we really stressed the conversation that we were having with those who were coming for the foot care. So they decided this was something that they really wanted to participate in, which was it's conversation, it's building relationships, it's communicating the needs, it's communicating, I would say, the feelings of people, the feelings of people who were volunteering, and the feelings of the people who attended the clinic, and having understanding and better relationships being built up from this. As we got closer, there were more hospital volunteers and church volunteers who, through illness, had to back out. So about a week before this clinic started in December, we were kind of low on volunteers, and I'm thinking to myself, oh dear, what did we do? And I talked with April and said, are we doing the right thing by having this the week before Christmas? Could be something we should do after Christmas when we have the volunteers to support the need. And April said to me, no, we need to do this before Christmas. We need to accept that God will provide for us. And I went along with April, and 2 days before the clinic, I heard from the director of the podiatry clinic at the hospital, and it was not a good call. She was not going to be able to be present at the clinic because of a workers' compensation injury that was preventing her from leaving work. She had to cover for someone. And I thought to myself, okay, this is yet another challenge. I will learn a little bit more about foot care so that we can make sure that people who are providing care are educated. And I made plans to go ahead and meet with Patty. And the day I was to meet with Patty, her mother-in-law was brought to the hospital for emergent care, and her husband had heart problems, and he was also transported to the hospital for emergent care. And I'm thinking, okay, God is going to provide. We will move forward. We will accept what's given to us, and it'll be okay. And I kept trying to reassure myself, and I was being tested, I realized, and I was testing myself as well. The day before the clinic, what I did was I came home, and after the very first clinic, we had so many supplies left over that we didn't need to ask people for medical supplies, but I took them home to store them at my house. And one of the things that I took home to store, I thought, was a box that had the word comfort cloth on it that was all taped up, which I thought had the disposable washcloths in it. Well, I decided to pack my car up about 4 o'clock the evening before the clinic, and I thought, this box doesn't feel very heavy. And I opened it up, and it was filled with socks and not comfort cloths. So not only did I not have a podiatry nurse for the clinic, but we had nothing to wash people's feet with. And I went into panic mode. And it's beyond anyone's working hours at the hospital. The medical warehouse where we had gotten supplies in the past was still open, so I called them. And, of course, the person I needed to speak to wasn't there, but they relayed a message, and he called me back. Oh, yes, Bonnie, I'll get you the claws. I'll even pick them up tonight and bring them to your house. He called me back about 5 minutes later and said, you're not going to believe this, but there's a national back order. No. So we don't have any to give you. So I'm thinking, okay, this is another test. I don't know what I'm going to do. I went online to see where I could get comfort cloths or some kind of cloth at CVS, at Walgreens. They were very expensive, but this was something that I knew we had to do. So I said, you know, I think I'm going to go to Walmart and see what Walmart has on their shelves, because I think their prices may be a little bit better. We are on December 20th, Tuesday evening. It's about 7 o'clock in the evening at this point. It's 5 days before Christmas, and I'm going to Walmart with the throngs of people who are picking up groceries for Christmas. They're picking up Christmas presents that they had on layaway, whatever the most recent sale was. I was there with thousands of people, it felt like. And it took me an hour and 15 minutes to get 2 packages of comfort cloths that were probably about this big, and there were 96 cloths in each package. But God did provide, because those packages only cost me $4.96 a piece, as opposed to $4.96 for one package of 8. So I dutifully stood in line and paid for these comfort cloths and felt so good about walking out of Walmart with comfort cloths until I had to be frisked to make sure that I wasn't walking out of the store with anything else. So this was truly a lesson in making sure ahead of time that if you have anything that you need to be educated on, you need to make sure that that education happens way in advance, that you need to make sure that you have all your supplies more than the day ahead of time, particularly if you're storing them from your last clinic. But I had everything, and we went to the clinic, and Elaine was there helping out. We had 2 nurses from the hospital who worked in the emergency room, and they knew many of the clients who had come in. The feeling around this clinic was so different. We had 8 volunteers that were from either the hospital or the church or someone such as Elaine who was just joining us. And then we had 4 people from the Footwear for Care, and we had 4 police officers, one of which is the faith-based community officer for the Hartford area, who were in attendance, and they brought shoes with them and boots with them. And we had a few people from St. Monica's, and we had a few people from Trinity Church, Hartford. There were 5 of us who were returnees for the second clinic, and everyone else was new. Holy Week, the first clinic, was reflective. It was quiet. It was soothing. The act of serving and the act of receiving and the holiness of those actions were not lost on anyone. December 21st, the Spirit was with us in a different way. The Spirit was with us in a joyous way. There was so much conversation happening. The clients were talking. The people who were tending to the clients were talking and were listening, and everything was happy. There were serious conversations that occurred, but people also knew that they were going to be given shoes. And I think that eased, for some of the clients, it eased the mood and had a different setting to it. What we didn't realize until April said something at our Deacons Council meeting this past month, there were a few clients who were there who were quite worried that they were there with the police because they had some issues and run-ins with the police. And April said, don't worry, we have you. You're okay. They're here to give you shoes. And just the act of saying that put people somewhat at ease. Sandy, the ministry dog, certainly put the clients at ease. And we tended in 3 hours to 43 clients. 42 out of the 43 clients were given shoes at the same time, and the last client, we had difficulty getting a pair of shoes to fit her, and Footwear for Care made a commitment to go to the store and get her a pair of shoes, and they connected with her the very next day, and she had a brand new pair of shoes. I expect that we will do this again. I also expect that something different will come out of the next clinic. I don't know what it is, but I'm anxious in a good way to see what it is. It's been a blessing for me. It's helped me. I know it's helped others, and it's helped people who want to listen and meet people where they are. It's given them the opportunity to do that. And none of this could have happened without reading Suzanne Epting-Watson's book, nor could it have happened without building relationships with the police, with Footwear for Care, with the colleges, with the hospital, with the different churches, with my friends. It's shown me how much of an impact building relationships has on being there in the world for people, being able to communicate needs, but also being able to be the bridge to have people talk to one another. And Jan, that came out to me so much when you were talking back in, was it November, on your ministries at the campus ministries. So much good came out of conversation and communication. And that's what it's about. And it's about showing love for one another with the communication and showing with your actions. I don't have anything else I think I want to say right now. I think we do have some pictures from our December clinic. Let's see, I'm seeing a round circle.
So hopefully all of you are seeing the foot care ministry, and there's some pictures. There's going to be 2 on most of the slides. Bonnie, are you seeing it yet?
Yep, I am. So what you're seeing are the people in the black and the blue are nurses from Hartford Hospital, and they were the 2 ER nurses that we had. But we set people up in pairs and tried to leave a little bit of space for conversation and for privacy to occur. And we sat across from our clients, and we put a towel on our legs and had them rest their feet on our legs as we tended to them. Again, we have people who are being cared for here by the nurses, and here is Elaine in the back of the picture on the right-hand side. She didn't know what she was doing when she walked in, but she accepted it with a smile, and she got right down to it and took the education, and I think she did quite well. Here are 3 of the police officers who were with us, and this woman here in the background with the fuchsia vest on is the footwear for care person who was the coordinator. And the woman in the motorized wheelchair is Rose Pashera Egan, and she works with the MANA program, and she also has, I think it's called Rose's Closet, where those that come in for Sunday meals can go into this area, and there is used clothing set out for them to take as they need. Just conversation that is happening. You can see on the left-hand side is, this was quite late, I think, in the foot clinic, and these were some of the boots and the shoes that we had. And this woman is Evelyn. She's from St. Monica's. As you can see, she is very intent on listening and having conversation. And this is a picture of some of the shoes and the boots that we received. Many of them were new, and some of them were gently used. Even Sandy got into the act on the right-hand side, all on her own. She decided she was going to walk underneath this gentleman's leg and help support his leg while April was tending to his feet. And on the left, April's giving a little love and getting a little love. Or not April, Sandy is. And here